very similar to astrology and the different esoteric sciences, there is a pictograph, an illustration, or a rendering that represents the individual on a spiritual level. So human design is no different. There is a chart, and the chart, if you're familiar with any of the infographics on the chakra system, it looks very similar to that. So I'll show you what it looks like. This is my human design chart. Don't be sneaky and snoopy. Okay, this is personal information. So you see there, you guys see there? Those are all my notes, but that's the basic human design chart. There are many different iterations of the chart and body graphs that you can get. This is the basic chart there, and you see the energy fields going down the middle of the human form. That is a human design chart. Now, one of the things that really fascinated me about human design, and again, I study world esoteric sciences throughout the world because I love knowledge. If you're a little bit familiar with Mayan astrology, the basic chart, the basic tree of life, your tile of conception, your conception tile. Well, first of all, a conception tile exists. That's number one in Mayan astrology, and I'm going to connect it to human design. And number two, the conception tile takes into consideration the energy field and the emotional, psychological, spiritual energy field that you were experiencing while you were in your mother's womb, which I find very special and super thorough and just fascinating. So human design does something similar. Along human design, there are gates. And these gates are directly related and are correlate to the I Ching, which is the esoteric book originating in China, right? So each of those gates, the 64 gates, is synthesized into the human design chart. And there's also 2 columns along the side of your chart. I'll show you in a little bit. And one of those columns, the column in red, is actually your design and your unconscious self that was created 88 days before you were born, which I think is really cool. Because it makes sense, right, to take that aspect into consideration. Now in astrology, you have similar things where if you have the sun and the moon and they're squared to one another, you might have a more traditional astrologist that says, okay, your parents had a lot of passion, but there was a lot of opposition because your moon and your sun are squared. I just love how human design does this. So I want to show you the column here. You see here where it says red. So this column is your design and or your unconscious self that was developed 88 days before you were born, which is cool. And it's very revealing. And then this here is your personality or your more conscious self. So depending on what kind of intuitive person you are, what sort of individual you are, what sort of life experiences you've had, you can look up the number that is at the top here and look up the I Ching wisdom and the I Ching life lesson and the key words that are associated with that number. And it's very, very telling. For me, as an example, I have in my unconscious design, I have gate 20, which is a key of integrity, and also tends to be, I believe, a more masculine energy, which I've always really directly associated with. So that was cool. So that's one thing I love about human design is that they take into consideration the gestation period, and they take into consideration your personality or your spiritual personality that was formed, if we could even say that, the spiritual identity that was formed 88 days before you were born, which is cool. And Mayan astrology does that too in the conception tile. Yes, so that's number one thing that I love about human design. The next thing that I really appreciate about human design is that it acknowledges or categorizes auric fields and auric types in a way that's a little bit differently than just the color. So actually, as far as I know, I'm still learning this and still studying this. As far as I know, they're not so much caught up on the color, but they're caught up on, or not caught up on, but they emphasize the different types. So the different types in human design, according to human design, is you can be a generator. You can be, and I'll go over these a little bit more. You can be a generator. You can be a manifesting generator, you can be a manifestor, you can be a projector, and you can be a reflector. Again, this is not to limit your identity. It's more so to integrate it as to understand this is one layer of who you are. It's not all of who you are, obviously. So generators have a very specific aura type. Manifestors have a different aura type. And this for me was very telling. I'm a manifesting generator. So as an example, if you look up, I'll put the link in the comments below. So you can go to Jovian Archives and get a free basic chart that's rendered. And I also will try to put a different PDF that I use that just has the basics of human design. So I nerded out on this, right? Of course. So if you look at your human design chart, you'll see the two columns, right? The red that is indicative of your time 88 days before you're born, and then the black that's more of your personality. So human design emphasizes auras. And if you are a generator, if your aura type is a generator, you just sort of look on the information below the chart and it categorizes it. There's so much clarity in this science, which I love. So the first thing that you want to look at is you want to understand your aura type. So if you're a generator, it means that you have a very beautiful enveloping aura, and it also makes you simultaneously very vulnerable to the energy field coming off from other people. I read a human design book that described the generators as the buzzing flowers in the garden. They just attract so much to them. And the generators get in trouble when they try to behave as manifestors and go out and manifest very aggressively. If anything, you could say that the way generators manifest is by being really bright and bubbly, and like their aura glows and just everything comes to them. Yes, so if you are a generator, be aware that you have a beautiful, enveloping, receptive aura, and that you can be very vulnerable to the energy fields coming from other people. You can also take in a lot of people at once. If you're a manifesting generator, your aura actually works very similarly, with the exception of when you skip to the manifesting stage. So I'm a manifesting generator. I have an enveloping aura, right? I'm very vulnerable and impressionable. I'm susceptible to the energy fields of other people. I'm a bit of a psychologist. I sort of like sort of wheeling and dealing and getting into the nitty gritty with other people and understanding them. However, when I skip through the levels, when I progress through the levels, which is a characteristic of a manifesting generator, and if you listen to the other, if you sort of listen to some other videos on YouTube, you'll see that manifesting generators have this habit of like skipping through the levels, progressing through the levels very quickly, and then having to go back and relearn. But that's okay. It's part of our strategy. So if you're a manifesting generator, your aura is enveloping until you start to manifest, and then you repel. And I've always identified as that. Even it's crazy because people would be like, oh, Sheba, you are so empathetic. And I'm like, okay, I'm empathetic, but I also know when to shut that shit off. Like, I have both very masculine and feminine. So manifesting generator makes sense. The generators have this enveloping, more receptive aura. And then when I'm in my manifesting mode, it's like, yo, if you are sort of being very melodramatic or emotive and I have something to do, you don't exist. I just sort of put my blinders on. It has to do with my aura type. So generators, manifesting generators, then you have projectors. Projectors are sort of the guides. And again, if you're a generator, manifesting generator, doesn't mean that you can't be a guide. It's just sort of like a general understanding to take in. So the projectors have a very focused and penetrating aura. So they absorb energy, and they are designed to take on people one-on-one. So projectors absorb energy. They tend to focus very well one-on-one, and can get right to the heart. Reflectors, if your aura type is a reflector, it's a very rare type, and it is a sampling aura, and it tends to be resistant. So it's resistant and sampling. If you are a pure manifestor, which is also a little bit more rare, I think the data right now that is available online says it's like 8 to 9% of the population, says that manifestors have a repelling aura. So we know how to sort of like put our headlights on and stay or blinders on rather, and just have tunnel vision and stay focused. So yes, human design, things that I find intriguing about it. I find very intriguing that it was downloaded by one individual. Very interesting. And then you can get into the incarnation crosses and stuff. It's a lot. So I don't know. I'm very fascinated by that it was downloaded by an individual with this level of accuracy and this level of synthesis involved. There's like a integrated, holistic, synthesized information. In fact, human design takes into consideration the Kabbalistic tree of life, the Indian chakra system, the I Ching, and the Western astrology. Like, who does that? Like, who's just able to download that information? And then, I don't know, that's so cool. So I find that interesting. I also love the clarity, as I said. I love that people are categorized based on type. Again, it doesn't have to limit you. Just sort of play with the idea. Categorized based on aura type, whether you're a generator, manifesting generator, manifestor, projector, reflector. And then the whole gestation period thing, like having access to the gates of the I Ching and having access to like an aspect of who you are unconsciously, your design 88 days before you were born. If you look up those numbers there that are on the columns, I think that's really cool. So along with your type, generator, manifestor, so on and so forth, you have a strategy. And your strategy, I believe, is connected to your inner authority. So I took notes. I believe it's connected to your inner authority. So you remember the info, the pictograph that I showed you earlier? Show it again. Here, each person is born with a particular chakric field that is defined. I'm a sacral being. Look up other videos on YouTube. Sacral being, sacral chakra, very creative, very sensual, and very primal. So I make primal sounds, and my gut sounds or my guttural sounds are actually more accurate, are the most accurate barometer of whether I really want to do something. If somebody asks me a question, in fact, so that's one of the strategies that they recommend for sacral authorities is either ask yes or no questions. Somebody asks me a question, and I'm like, means I'm really not that into it, and I have to pay attention to those sounds. Or if I'm like, yes, this is something that I want to do. Yes, okay. Then that means I really want to do it. So that's that other layer there. That other layer of one of your chakric systems being your primary authority. And then they offer you a strategy. So for me, let's see. My strategy is to respond. So I'm a sacral being. I want to check in with my sacral chakra, and I want to respond. This also has to do with my aura type because they're related. So the fact that I'm a generator means that I have to wait for life to respond. I have to practice patience. I think those are the major points that I wanted to talk to you guys about. Let's see. La 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 la. Oh, so only other thing that I would say, or that I want to say in this video as a basic introduction to human design, besides the fact that it's really dope, and I've used it as a mental psychological device to help me remember my sense of identity. There's affirmations that are associated with human design, gates, all this stuff, is that you have open energy centers and defined energy centers. And your open energy centers means that you're a little bit more susceptible and vulnerable to being seduced by societal instructions.